Good afternoon. To our many friends and supporters of the community human services sector, and including those of you with those gold shirts on, the caring force, I see you out there. Thank you. Welcome. I am Michael Weeks, President of the Providers Council, and on behalf of our board and staff, we are pleased that you're here to join us for the second Human Services Gubernatorial Forum. We are honored that you traveled from as far away as Pittsfield and Provincetown to be with us today, and all the places in between. And we're also very proud that this is the first time the four candidates have sat post-primary together, and what they're going to talk about is, of course, an issue of great importance, human services. Let's give them a round of applause for that. Now, as you know, this is not a debate. There will be venues for that in the coming weeks. We want an exchange of ideas, creative solutions, and new approaches to problems that have vexed the Commonwealth for many, many times. We're looking for opportunities to talk about successes, to build upon the successes of the past. We want to harness the ingenuity, the passion, and commitment of people in this audience and those out that exist right here in the great Commonwealth. Our opportunity here is to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to fulfill their full potential. Now, you may ask, why is this sector special? Well, here are a few questions that perhaps you in the audience can answer. Which sector in Massachusetts, primarily operated by community nonprofits, ensures our community's safety net? Which sector advocates for and responds to a growing number of people identified on the autism disorder spectrum, or an increased number of our elderly who are living longer, or veterans who are very often coming back with traumatic brain injuries? Which one of our sectors is working with people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, people needing protection from abuse and neglect, those also fleeing from domestic violence, individuals who are homeless, people with behavioral health needs, or physical needs, just to name a few? Which sector had a 47.9% growth from 2003 to 2011 for employees in terms of their workforce, when the overall jobs in Massachusetts declined during that same period? Which sector has over 6,000 locations and sites throughout the Commonwealth, which in fact has 145,000 workers, whose local spending of $2.5 billion is creating $899 million of economic activity that creates another 24,000 jobs? And unfortunately, which sector with an 80% female workforce has 1 out of 5 living at less than 200% of the federal poverty level? If your answer to that was human services, it would be correct. And that is one of the reasons why we're here today, to talk about this and other issues that affect our industry, and to talk about what it is, and what better place it is to do it than right here at Faneuil Hall, the cradle of liberty. Because on this stage, which has historic precedence throughout our career, we've heard spoken wisdom from many. Some of our leaders like Frederick Douglass, Susan B. Anthony, Ted Kennedy, Samuel Adams, Lucy Stone, have all spoken great things about what was important for America, what was important for the Commonwealth. And we're holding these four candidates up to those standards and expect the same from them. Now, this event would not have been possible without the inspiration and commitment of our board, and I'd like to recognize Andy Pond, our board president, and also, would you please stand, and also all of our board members, if you would please stand so you can be recognized in council. Thank you. It also would not have been possible without the superb Providers Council staff and the excellent planning by Liberty Square Group. I thank you. Now, my responsibility now is to introduce to you our moderator, Karen Holmes Ward. Karen is the Director of Public Affairs and Community Services at WCVB Television, as well as host and executive producer of Cityline, the station's award-winning weekly news magazine, which addresses the accomplishments, concerns facing the people of color living in Boston and its suburbs. Among the many great stars she's had on the show includes A-listers like Oprah Winfrey and Denzel Washington. Holmes Ward also oversees WCVB's public service and community outreach efforts, raising awareness about the need for affordable housing in the greater Boston area, and WCVB's first-of-its-kind web-based initiative, Commonwealth 5. And WCVB's community service efforts were definitely laudable over the past few years. They've won awards, particularly one after the Boston Marathon attack, when they were honored with the National Association of Broadcasters Service to Community and Television Award. Karen herself has also won plenty of accolades over the years. Of course, she's been honored with the Providers Council Media Award a few years ago, but also has been honored by the Boston JCs, the National Association of Black Journalists, Big Sisters of Greater Boston, Urban League of Eastern Massachusetts, and the Greater Boston section of the National Council of Negro Women, among others. Please give a warm welcome to our moderator and our friend, Karen Holmes Ward.
Thank you very much, Michael, and thank you to the Providers Council and its many member organizations for inviting me here today. I'm honored to serve again as moderator for the second Providers Council Gubernatorial Candidate Forum. This is the only forum focusing solely on the human service sector, which employs more than 145,000 people in Massachusetts and serves roughly 1 in 10 residents. And I'm glad to report that we did not have to twist any of the candidates' arms to have them be here today. So that tells me that they already know how important all of you are to the Commonwealth, and more from them on that soon. Now, as part of WCVB's 5 for the Community initiative, we are so pleased and honored to serve as the media co-sponsor for this event, and we're looking forward to what we hope will be a spirited and informative discussion. Now, before we begin, let me just review the rules of engagement for everyone. First, for the audience here at Faneuil Hall, we are so happy that you took time out of your busy lives to spend your afternoon with us. We want to thank you for submitting questions for the candidates, and we will work hard to stay on track to get as many answered as possible. Now, in the interest of time, we ask that you hold your applause until the end of the event. And please make sure your cell phones are off. Put them on silent, but there's one exception. We do encourage you to use them to tweet live from this event. And the hashtag you can use is hashtag HSGOVForum. That's HSGOVForum. Now, to introduce the candidates, to my right, Charlie Baker. This is a disobedient crowd. Martha Coakley. To my left, Jeff McCormick. And Evan Falchuk. Now that we have the applause out of our system, we will ask you to hold your applause until the end of the event. For the next 90 minutes, candidates, you'll be asked a series of questions, some that I will ask, others that will be asked through videotape vignettes starring representatives from human service consumers, workers, and the public. And we're pleased to have some of the stars of our vignettes join us today. I ask that they stand to be recognized, and we thank them in advance for sharing their stories with us. You may please stand, those that have questions that are in the vignettes. Each candidate will have up to 90 seconds to answer each question, and there is a timekeeper seated right there in the front row. He will give you a 15-second yellow card warning, and then the red card stop signal. And I have been empowered to assist you in completing your statement. if you go beyond stop. Based on our pre-event drawing, Evan Falchuk will answer first, and the others will follow going clockwise. The order will rotate with each subsequent question, so you'll each get the chance to be first. Now, before today, the candidates agreed upon the event format, and we thank them in advance for respecting the process and to avoid crosstalk and direct questioning of one another. This is not a debate. Please don't use your time to ask questions of one another. And you'll each have a 2-minute closing statement at the conclusion of our event. So let us begin with our first question, which will be answered first by Evan Falchuk. And here's the question. As governor, what would a vibrant and effective community-based human services delivery system look like to you?
Thank you, and once again, thank you for the opportunity to be here to discuss this incredibly important issue, which I believe does not get taken as seriously as it must by our political establishment. To me, one of the most important events of the last year in this community was the fact that the Providers Council had to sue the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to implement Chapter 257 funding. I struggle to understand as a voter why the state doesn't follow its own laws when it comes to protecting the most vulnerable populations in our midst. This is one of the primary obligations of government. And when you hear it described, you could do it and say, we have to do this because it's the right thing to do, which we should. You could say it's because it's the law, and that's a good enough reason too. And you could say it because there's an opportunity, because there are so many people in need of services. The population that needs help is growing in each one of the areas for a lot of different reasons. So if you're looking for places to find a business opportunity, to create jobs, to help the people that are receiving those services to live a full and complete life with real opportunity in it, this is the place to turn. But at the very least, we should not be in a position where people have to sue their own government to enforce and follow their own law.
Thank you. Jeff, as governor, what would a vibrant and effective community-based human services delivery system look like to you?
Karen, thank you very much. And to the Providers Council, thank you so much for having us all here. My name is Jeff McCormick, and I'm running as an independent for governor. I've been building companies largely with technologies for 27 years. I believe this community could use someone like me. I understand that we need to take a break from the status quo, that so many of you have had ideas that you've given me as I travel throughout the Commonwealth. One of the things in my world, you cannot build good companies and good solutions without having a predictable budget, without knowing that it's going to be there, without being able to think longer term. Think about your clients, think about who you serve. How do you do that living in an unknown world from year to year? I don't think that's possible. I think we need to do a much better job of coordinating the care. Again, so many providers have great ideas on how they can work with other providers and also work with state agencies, and yet it seems like you're just not being heard. I think it's extremely important, and again, I think a lot of this is the state's job, and I do think a lot of it is about coming into the 21st century and using technology the way it's used in the private sector. And lastly, I really think that all of you have ideas on innovation.
Thank you.
We need to do that as well.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Charlie?
Well, thank you, Karen, and thank you to everybody for being here today. But more importantly, thank you for the work you do when you're not here every single day on behalf of some of the folks in Massachusetts who need our help most of all. And as I look out in this audience, I see many people who I've known for many years and worked with in a variety of capacities. And I also see folks whose programs I've actually visited over the course of this campaign who are doing wonderful work under very complicated circumstances and situations. With respect to the question about vibrancy and effectiveness, I would say 3 things. The first, and it comes up every time I talk to folks in the provider community about what they're up to and what they're doing, we need to do a much better job as a Commonwealth helping you help us figure out what our objectives are with regard to these programs. Many of you feel that the state is pulling you in 75 different directions with respect to what the actual objectives are for the programs you operate and the people you serve, which is enormously confusing to you and to the people you're trying to help and move forward with. The second is you need to be funded at a level that makes sense. Evan brought up 257. I feel like 257 is the train that never gets to the station. It's been talked about for years at this point, and I can promise you as governor, it will be funded. And the third thing I believe we need is a much simpler system, because all of you have expressed to me concerns about just tons of administrivia that gets in the way of doing what makes the most sense for the people you serve.
Thank you. Martha?
So thank you, Karen, and thank you to the Providers Council for having us here today. I appreciate the chance to talk about this. I think there are 3 things that we can do off the bat. I also agree that we should fully fund Chapter 257. We've talked about it on the campaign. I've known about this for a long time as I've worked in the public sector. There's just no reason not to do that, and as governor, I will make that a priority. The second I think that we need to do is to, as we move towards more integrated healthcare and lowering our costs on healthcare and getting better results, making sure that we push out into our community health centers the ways in which we can integrate behavioral, mental health, the other services that families need, where they're going to get it first. And the third thing I think is the governor and as state government can be a good partner for you. It means that we break down the silos within our agencies, because as you know from the work you do, that families often have not 1 or 2, sometimes 3 problems. And so to make sure that through DMF or DCF or the other agencies that we are working with you to coordinate that care in the best possible way. I knew my first week on the job in the Lowell District Court in 1986, I met a young man accused of a crime, adult, developmentally disabled. I spent a lot of time trying to find a place for him. We're still doing that, and we need to do better, and I know we can if I'm your governor. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. For our next question, let's turn to the video screens.
I work with advocates as a direct care support staff. I work with the people with development disability.
I'm a protective services worker for Bristol Elder Services, so I investigate cases of elder abuse, neglect, financial exploitation, and self-neglect.
I'm a rehab specialist at Bay Cove, so I manage 14 clients with mental health issues.
I do what I do because I love to help people. You know, if I investigate cases of neglect or abuse and can alleviate that, it makes me feel good about myself. I know that I'm helping someone that's in need.
The most challenge is the pay. The pay is really not good. It's not sufficient enough to accommodate the basic needs.
I've never been able to just do this job and pay my bills. The first job I had in the field was as a residential counselor in 1997, and the pay was $11 an hour. I switched companies in 2012, and I got a residential counselor job, and the pay was $12 an hour. So in 15 years, the pay had only changed $1. That's all they decided it was worth. Over 15 years was a dollar more. So I think for most of us at the level that I'm at, you have to work a couple of jobs just to get by.
I have 2 jobs. So currently, my second job is I'm in sales. I sell cell phones. Also, what I do is I work at Bristol Elders Monday through Friday from 7:30 in the morning till 5 o'clock in the evening. I then go directly to my second job on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and don't get home till about 9:30 at night. And then I work all the weekend as well. So realistically, I really only spend Mondays and Fridays with my family.
Are they concerned that many of the people who we are helping are receiving the same benefits as the employees, especially on the lower levels and the residential counselors at Bay Cove? Many of them are on food stamps. Some of them are on welfare. And they're working full time. It just doesn't seem fair to me.
What would you do as governor to ensure that direct care workers who provide service to 1 in 10 people in Massachusetts are offered a fair wage?
So the question, many workers make less than $12 an hour to perform some of the most complex jobs in the Commonwealth. how would you ensure community-based workers who provide services on behalf of the Commonwealth receive a sufficient wage? Jeff, we'll ask you to answer first.
I think everyone in this room understands how demanding these jobs are. And for any of us who've actually had friends or family in these situations, you know from your experience. Part of this is about the overall level of funding. Another part of this is about the job itself. And if the state empowers you to do the job easier because it shares best practices throughout the Commonwealth, which again is something I've heard from provider to provider, successful providers whose model is not copied anywhere. So providers who know that there's technologies out there that would make them more efficient and make their lives easier. That's the kind of thing that if you can do more for people, or you can get better outcomes for people with less, that actually provides more of a budget for everyone working in this very demanding field. And I really think we need to drive in that direction to help people out, because the providers absolutely want to serve their clients as best as they can.
Thank you. Charlie.
Well, certainly we need to fund and play by the rules of 257. That would be a fundamental objective of my administration. The second thing we should do, you know, I spent a lot of time in and out of these programs over the course of the past 10 years, and I absolutely believe that well-paid, long-term, experienced direct care workers not only do a better job of serving the populations and the people that we would like them to serve, but I actually think the really good ones, and there's many of them out there, do such a good job that they can actually save money elsewhere. And I've never understood why, and I will do this as governor, we haven't had a conversation about how big the opportunity is to not only improve care for people and improve wages for direct care workers, but to also do that in a way that works financially for the organizations and for the Commonwealth. And a big piece of this one, by the way, means we need to take a real hard look at a lot of the rules and regs around personnel and hiring and staffing and everything else. There are great opportunities here to do great things for people, but you got to step up and recognize that well-paid, qualified, experienced staff can do great things in many ways.
Thank you. Martha?
So this really is a question about our values and about addressing what we know is income inequality, not just in Massachusetts, but in the country. And this, these stories that we've heard from our witnesses today about the difficulty of doing something you love that you want to do, but trying to make ends meet, is something I've heard time and time again over the course of the last year, but even before that, as we dig out of this recession that's the worst we've ever seen, that as we look to build a sustainable economic recovery in Massachusetts for everybody, not just for people at the top, people who are doing well. We know that Wall Street is going to do fine on its own. What we need to do is address with our values the working people here who need a livable wage, who need to be able to afford their health care themselves, who need to understand that we value their services, and that's true whether you're cleaning planes at Logan Airport, you're working with the young people at the Germaine Lawrence School for Girls, you're working with kids at the Boys and Girls Club, you are working with our seniors, our developmentally disabled, that most vulnerable population. And that part of it is going to come from a governor, but it's also come from, I think, our ability to say, we value these jobs, we need this work, and we are going to look at making this a living wage. You have my commitment as governor that I'm committed to that, including your ability to organize and get those wages.
Thank you. Thank you. And Evan, we'll have you complete this round.
So here's an idea. What would happen if the state did a study to see how people were being paid in the human services field and said, hey, they're undercompensated, and then the state passed a law to pay people appropriately? Wouldn't that be a good idea? But the thing is, we did that, and the state has not followed up with its obligations. You've done all the things you're supposed to do. You've talked to all the people you're supposed to talk to. You've gone to all the fundraisers you're supposed to go to. And yet, there is no action being taken. Now, I know this isn't a debate, but the Attorney General could file a lawsuit against the state. Other states, you see Attorney Generals doing those kinds of things to compel action. I don't know why we have to elect someone who could do it right now. And I know that Charlie's been in government for a long time during all these problems happening, even then. So we need a new framework. We need a new set of leaders that can come in who are willing to live up to the obligations and not just say the really nice words about how great the work you do is, because it is good. But we're talking about following the law. That, to me, is a baseline notion of what it means to have a functioning democracy, what it means for people to have confidence in an electoral process that says when we hire people to do this work, I'm talking about our legislators and our elected officials, that when they raise their hand and take an oath of office, that they uphold and support and enforce the law.
Very good. We will turn back to the video for our next vignette and question.
This summer, I'm working as a youth service specialist for ABCD. You know, sometimes if you don't have a job during the summer, you get bored, and that could lead to all sorts of other things and involvement in other things.
I'm at Pine Street Inn, the men's working dorm. Yeah, that's where I'm living now.
Right now I work at Road to Responsibility, and I'm looking for a job out in the community.
I guess back in 2009 was probably the last time I had full-time employment. I suffer from severe depression, which keeps me out of work. And then once I'm depressed, I use alcohol and drugs to try to ease the pain, and that makes the matters much worse. So,
I used to work at Roach Brothers in Marshfield as a bagger. They weren't giving me enough hours, so I gave them my notice and left.
I would say the hardest thing about trying to find a job while you're homeless is not having a place to live and having all your belongings with you in like a backpack or your suitcase. You know, I don't believe an employer would appreciate you bringing those things along to an interview. Yeah.
It's like whatever job you go to, and they said, I'm sorry, we don't want you because of your disability. We can't handle you here. I don't think that's fair. I think all of them should accept us because we're human beings too.
As governor, what would you do to improve job training and employment for people with disabilities, for the homeless, for the urban youth?
So the question, as governor, what would you do to improve employment and job training for individuals with disabilities, those who are homeless, urban youth, new Americans, and others with barriers to employment? Charlie, we'll have you respond first.
You know, I spent a little time at the Pine Street Inn a few months ago and learned a lot of interesting things about the place, among others that they are very much getting into the housing business and also into the job training business. And they are creating opportunities for people to not only work at Pine Street, for example, in their catering and their cafeteria program, but they also have relationships now with a whole group of employers, and a lot of the folks who stay there actually end up leaving Pine Street and going to work during the day, and they provide kind of the wraparound and support services. And in fact, we've had several events where we've had Pine Street cater the events we've had as a campaign because we're so impressed with what they were doing and wanted to support their programs. So point number one, I think the Commonwealth ought to make, a Commonwealth buys $5 to $7 billion worth of goods and services every year. I think the Commonwealth ought to be buying a lot of goods and services from provider organizations that are out there creating employment opportunities for the people that they take care of. And we should be encouraging municipalities and other employers to do the same thing. There's an enormous collection of buying opportunities associated with doing the right thing by the organizations that are taking care of and providing support and opportunities for these people. And the Commonwealth can be a real leader in making sure there's an economic engine there to support those folks. And I'd love to do that as governor.
Thank you. Martha.
I appreciate that the need for employment and support for employment is crucial in so many ways, giving people a sense of independence, financial means, the competency to feel that they can grow and participate. And some of the issues are different depending on the population. I think looking for jobs for our kids requires some different strategies as the economy turns around and we form those partnerships with many of you and other businesses. In looking at our schools, we can address those issues because I think we know that experience for young people is important to get that first job. It's a good way to get them started on the way to success. That's why our Voc Tech schools are so great when they give our kids the opportunity to work. For people who are developmentally disabled, the issue is often one of survival, and peer support is so important here. I've seen very successful programs that many of you work with. The federal government and the state government plays a big role. I remember working in one of our federal buildings many years ago and making friends with the employees of Work Inc. who do such a great job. Increasing those opportunities is part of the next governor's job. And as to the homeless, I agree with Charlie. I mean, Pine Street Inn is one great resource, but we have too many people without homes, and we need to look at developmental problems they have, whether it's alcohol, substance abuse, mental health, which I know we're going to talk about, and address some of the basic issues and make sure that people have an opportunity through your programs and what the state does to get into that important pipeline of getting a job.
Thank you, Martha. Evan?
In the course of this campaign, there have been many candidate forums, and one was actually about this issue of job training. It's put on by SkillWorks and the Boston Foundation. It was at Roxbury Community College. 3 of us were there. This issue of job training and the funding for it was the major focus of that forum. There are numerous programs for job training for people all across the spectrum with all kinds of different backgrounds that just weren't being funded by the state. And I'm not talking about spending hundreds of millions of dollars. I'm talking about some tens of millions of dollars that were not provided for youth jobs, for training for people that are experiencing homelessness, for all variety of people. The money's not there. At the end of the legislative session this year, the legislature voted $1.1 billion to expand the convention center in downtown Boston. Well, I don't understand the kind of priorities we have when there's such a need for support for people to help them get jobs and to move ahead. And we decide, or they decide, that the top priority is to expand out the convention center. We've got some serious rethinking to do. And it will not change because the political establishment wakes up one day and says, oh, you know what? Let's do things completely differently. It will only change when we vote to bring in new people who want to do things in the right way.
Thank you. Jeff, you'll close out this round?
Thank you. I think one of the keys to this is we better start thinking long term. If anyone thinks long-term, it should be the state because they're helping people and taking care of people for a long period of time. And we just don't do that well. When I was up in Lowell talking to Cheryl Amy of Community Teamwork, we were talking about they're serving 50,000 people in that region, over 60 cities and towns, and how for some reason the state supporting all these programs decided to completely cut out the training budget, which was a very small piece of it, but that's the one thing that gave people an on-ramp back into the productive workforce. That made absolutely no sense to me. When I was down in Norwell with Friendship Home, and I was meeting some of the clients there, and when you talk to them and you see how excited they are to be going to work, you realize there is a place in the workforce for everyone, and we have to find it. You know, we have to try and get people to live as productive a life as possible. And by the way, a shout out to Tedeschi's because they are doing a great job taking on a number of their clients there. And then when you talk to Ted Tedeschi, he said, you know what? These people bring so much to our organization. They actually bring us together. We're actually more productive. We've got to change the conversation and the dialogue so everyone out there really gets it.
Thank you very much. Now what we're going to do is break up the vignettes with some lightning round questions, and we just want one-word answers for these questions. As we move very quickly through them, I realize this may be very difficult for you political types, but please only answer yes or no. If the casino ballot question fails and casinos become a reality in Massachusetts, the expanding gaming law will ensure no less than $5 million in funding for public health programs to address problem gambling. would you designate an additional reasonable percentage of the state's revenue gain to fund human services above previous maintenance levels? Martha Coakley.
Yes.
Evan Falchuk.
Yes.
Jeff McCormick.
Yes.
Charlie Baker.
Yes.
A+, everyone. Now, the next question. Municipalities have often requested that nonprofit, tax-exempt, community-based human services organizations providing service to residents make a payment in lieu of taxes, often called pilot, but pressuring these organizations to pay can diminish service levels and quality. If governor, would you seek to ban pilots imposed on these organizations? Evan?
No.
Jeff?
No.
Charlie?
Just these organizations or any nonprofit?
The community-based human service organizations providing services to residents.
Yeah.
Very good. Martha?
No.
No. Okay, thank you. Question 3. Recent high-profile incidents in the NFL have brought the issue of domestic violence to the top of the news. But the prevalence of domestic violence is far more wide-reaching. If elected, would you bring together victims, survivors, thought leaders, and those working in the sector to create a summit on domestic violence to discuss how we can take steps to eradicate these acts of violence? Jeff?
Yes.
Charlie?
Yes.
Martha?
I'm going to break the rule. We just passed a new law, but of course we will continue to enforce it.
So the answer is yes. Thank you very much. Evan?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you, candidates, for your one-word answers, with some exceptions. We appreciate that. We're going to turn back to the video monitors and get another question from some workers in the human services sector.
I'm a staff advocate at HMEA. As staff advocates, I really reach out to our employees and try to educate them about the benefits that HMEA has to offer, not only HMEA, but outside resources that they may want.
I'm from Bristol Elder Services, and I'm a home care case manager. Basically, I set up home care services for elders so they can stay in their homes as opposed to going to a nursing home.
I work for the Association for Community Living as the Director of Nursing.
I received a bachelor's degree in communications and minor in writing.
I have a bachelor's in psychology, so I've always liked working with the elderly people, so it worked out perfectly that there was an opening at Bristol.
With the help of the tuition remission program, I was able to go to school, and I became a nurse, and that's how I got into the position of Director of Nursing.
When I went to school, I wanted to be a journalist, right? Everybody wanted to be Oprah. That's like every little black girl's dream, right? You see Oprah billionaire, that's not a bad job. As I've grown into this field, I understand it's not the journalism. I think I wanted to help people by educating them. But I feel that if I'm not educated enough, I can't provide that to the people I serve.
There's a lot of mental health issues that we're seeing in the younger aging population, which I don't feel I have the training necessary to be the best help to them that I could be if I had gone to graduate school.
It's very expensive. It's very expensive. Even like within the state school, I know the state school are a little bit cheaper, but even with that, it's expensive to be able to do that, work, care for your family, and do all those things.
Absolutely not. I have already gotten accepted to graduate school. I started, but I couldn't afford it, so the cost of grad school is just prohibitive to actually going because we have undergraduate student loans, and we don't make a lot in human services to begin with. So, based on those two things, it's almost impossible to go.
The more educated people are, I think the better they're able to help the people that we care for.
As governor, I would like to know, what would you do to expand the tuition remission program and open it up to graduate level courses for workers like me?
Similar to a state employee benefit tuition remission allows eligible human service employees to register for unoccupied seats in public college. So, what would you do to improve educational opportunities to match the projected job growth needed in this sector, and would you support expanding the tuition remission program to include access to graduate level courses? Martha?
So this is an exciting opportunity for Massachusetts to grab, particularly in this area, but I think for all of our residents here, investing in education, particularly for this sector, makes such common sense. We've already proposed that for those who want to go to a junior college, there be need-blind admissions. And we know for many people with just a high school degree, sometimes the cost of even getting that remedial work done is important. That can be a gateway to a great job or a further degree education beyond that. And because we are so rich in Massachusetts with a terrific state school system with 2-year and 4-year schools, as well as our other not-for-profits, this is a place where the next governor can really focus on where are those jobs and where do we need the skill sets for dealing with our people here, those who are mentally ill, those who are developmentally disabled, our kids, our seniors. All ways we can keep costs down, keeping people in their homes longer, making sure that we push out to community health care services, mental health and behavioral health, and investing in the education of people who will do that. That to me is a no-brainer. It's a first priority of mine, and we can find pathways now to make sure that everybody who wants to get engaged in the education that will let them do that work, the cost of money should be less, the cost of tuition should be less, and we should be looking at ways to make anybody who wants to have that education available. The state has that obligation. It's a bonus if we do it.
Thank you. Evan?
There's a lot of nice, vague platitudes about these topics, but we don't see the kind of action that's needed. There have been bills proposed. There was a bill proposed to create a loan repayment program for direct care workers. Didn't get passed, sent to study. Is the political establishment very serious about these issues, or they just want to say enough to tantalize you, to make you think, this time it will be different? And you know, maybe it could have been worse. We did our best. But another $1 billion for a convention center. When I watch these vignettes and hear the stories these people are talking about, I know you're here in the audience, facing these challenges, and I hear the nice words about how important direct care workers are, where's the money? Where's the money? It's being spent in the wrong places. It's being spent in the wrong places. So yes, there's wonderful programs that the state has that could be used. If you could buy into the Group Insurance Commission, your health care might be cheaper. If you could be in loan repayment programs, your school would be cheaper. If you could get slots at open community college slots, it would be easier for you to get a higher education. Everybody knows it, but why aren't we doing something about it? The reason that I'm running, and I founded a new party, United Independent, is so that we could start to elect into our legislature lots of people who want to actually deal with these issues and not just talk to you about them.
Thanks, Evan. Jeff?
People get into this field for a lot of different reasons. Many people like to join companies and organizations because they want to further their experience, they want to further their education, they want to further their understanding in these areas. I have worked with a company, building a company in math software. We teach millions of kids math very, very cheaply per kid throughout the United States. That's something that we can do in our college and university system, and that is bring technology to bear where it's actually cheaper to deliver education to more people. And when you do that, you will create many more of these kinds of slots so that you will have many more opportunities for people to go to school cheaply or for free and further their education. That is absolutely a direction we need to go, which doesn't mean that everyone is taking online classes, by the way. It's just integrating it into the whole school culture, because we cannot continue to have these very significant annual increases in our college costs. It just is unsustainable. So we actually have to literally start changing that system to benefit the system we're talking about here, and absolutely I'm in favor of doing it on a graduate level as well.
Thank you. Charlie?
You know, I talk a lot during the campaign about some of my thoughts and ideas with respect to higher education in general, and one of the ones that Jeff mentioned I've talked about quite a bit, and I've seen a lot of demonstrations on, which is this idea of using online education as a complement to what you can do in the classroom. And part of the reason I think that's a really interesting opportunity with respect to the folks who work with you, they work, okay? I mean, the great thing about online education is you can take the class when you can take the class. You don't have to take it when it's offered. And I think one of the things that makes it attractive to a lot of people is it makes it possible for them to take the class when they have the opportunity to take the class instead of having to take it when the lecture's given. If the lecture's at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday, that's pretty hard if you have a full-time job. I certainly believe that one of the things we should do is put together what I would describe as kind of a benchmark curriculum, working with the Providers Council and others to do that. And frankly, I think the way it ought to work is we ought to think about what the salary structure looks like relative to how people perform against that benchmark, which would create some incentives for people to take those courses and to continue to improve their education and treat it as an opportunity, not just to get a different set of skills and all the rest, but also, you know, to follow a career ladder. You know, there are a lot of reasons why people want to better themselves educationally, but we ought to make this something where it's also tied to the way people think about what they do for work and how they get compensated.
Thank you very much. And we will go back to the monitors for our next vignette and question.
I'm the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of the Seven Hills Foundation. Seven Hills Foundation has 3,600 employees and a $190 million operating budget. And over the last 10 years, we've faced $1 million increases on an annual basis, totaling well over $10 million. We've continually had to increase the employee contributions, change the benefit design plans substantially, and we're probably going to end up having to do that again this year.
Being a social worker per se, there aren't always the best benefits for us. You know, there's low wages, high cost of health insurance, and due to the high cost of health insurance, I have to have a second job, which then prevents me from seeing my family as much as I'd like to.
If I was paying for it, I wouldn't be able to afford it. I'm on my wife's insurance. It's a little bit better and more manageable than mine. If I was using it with my company, it would take most of my pay.
Insurance rates have gone up. When I initially was working with children, it was a little bit less expensive, but the wage was also lower. Went into this field, once I got my bachelor's degree, the wage went up a little bit, but the health insurance increased significantly. Currently paying $720 a month for health insurance. And that doesn't include co-insurances, co-pays, and as you know, with little children, they're in the doctors frequently. So I'm there quite a bit.
The employees in the human service facilities are the lowest paid direct support professionals in the Commonwealth. And they can't afford any further out-of-pocket expenses. So, you know, this last round of Chapter 257 rate reform was great. We thank the Commonwealth for that, but we don't want to see all that go to the health insurance providers. I'd like to ask what other steps you would take to control health insurance costs, keeping in mind these staff care for the Commonwealth's most vulnerable clients.
Would you endorse and support allowing low-paid human services workers through providers to access health insurance plans through the Group Insurance Commission? What other steps would you take to help control health care costs for this workforce that provides critical care to our state's residents? Evan.
Well, this is a hugely important issue for everybody in the Commonwealth. The reason healthcare costs keep going up is because of the monopolistic consolidation of hospitals. Groups like Partners buying up other hospitals are all about raising price. And it started under a Republican governor, Bill Weld, when they decided to deregulate the hospital market. And it's continued. And the current deal with Partners to buy South Shore Hospital and other hospitals, which the Attorney General has approved and is now tied up in the courts, will cost consumers, including the people in this video, tens of millions of dollars a year without improving the quality of care. It's not going to happen. But this is what's happened with our political establishment. These mergers should be stopped. We should be implementing an all-payer fee schedule like they've done in some other states to get rid of the market distortions and the profiteering that's happening in our healthcare market that flows through to everybody in the form of higher insurance premiums. That's what's going on. People don't want to talk about it because groups like Partners are politically influential. And people will say, don't say that. But you have to say it because it's what's actually happening. And it's what's costing not just consumers, but businesses, charitable organizations, service providers, municipalities, and indeed the state itself. It has to stop, and it will if I'm your governor.
Jeff.
Thanks, Karen. We have to remember that it is deceiving when we just talk about the premiums because, as was pointed out in this video, the co-pays and deductibles are a huge piece of this as well. More and more of the burden is being shifted to us. I do believe that people ought to be able to opt into the GIC. I don't think that is the solution. We need to rethink the model of delivery. We need to push as much care down to the primary care level as possible. We need to work with our community health centers because that is where the rubber meets the road. That is where you curtail the expenses. 75% of the cost of health care are in chronic diseases. We need to start doing that. There are companies out there that do this for organizations. You should benefit from that. It is tremendous savings and you get better quality care. Isn't that what you want? Because if you can save there, you can get it back in your salaries and other benefits.
Charlie?
You know, I think the idea of creating a purchasing collaborative of some kind that would plug into the Group Insurance Commission is absolutely something that's worth pursuing. When the Commonwealth made the decision to permit cities and towns to start joining the Group Insurance Commission, there was a lot of talk at the time about, you know, can we actually put that together in a way that's going to work, that's going to be sustainable and manageable administratively and financially over time? And actually, it did. And I think the big lesson in that is if you create the structure the right way, you could do that with other kinds of organizations as well. And I think creating a structure that would look sort of the way a Chamber of Commerce association would work involving the provider council and the provider industry is a really good idea. The one question I don't know the answer to is whether you can do it or not under the Affordable Care Act. That would have to get figured out because it might be considered to be an association. The biggest issue for me with respect to the rising cost of health care, and I've been saying this for 10 years, which means no one thinks I'm right, is transparency. Everybody needs to know the price and performance of the services that are delivered. You know more about your refrigerator and your washing machine than you know about your health care. We have got to make pricing and performance transparent and publicly available. Same service, same person, same outcome. 4 different providers within a few minutes of each other can vary in price by as much as 200, 300, or 400%. We are never going to solve the problem until we put the sunshine on price and performance.
Martha?
So thank you, Charlie, for that introduction to what I was going to say, that the Attorney General's office has been the agency over the last 8 years that has shone that light on the high cost of certain providers for knees or other kinds of ways we measure. And so we do need transparency. We did have a dysfunctional and still to some degree have a dysfunctional market, but I also have to push back on Evan. He's entitled to his opinion about the partners' settlement and the proposed agreement. It's not tied up in the courts. It's in the full process of transparency. And it is going to cut costs, unlike just 2 or 3 years down the road, the other options that we have. And I still stand by that. So I just want to be clear that that settlement has a great impact immediately on consumers' costs on an organization, Mass General and Brigham and Women's, that supply very good quality care. But let's get to the issue of the question here. We know that Massachusetts came together, the first state in the country, with business leaders and Democrats and Republicans and consumers and advocacy groups to say, we've got to do 3 things here. We want to get everybody covered. We want access for everybody. We want to give good quality health care, and we got to get the costs down. We are still working on number 3. Charlie knows that. I know that. You know that. So the suggestions that we have moving forward towards more community health care, making sure that we get away just from fee-for-service, integrating that with behavioral health care, and cutting your premiums and your co-pays, that's got to be on the next governor's plate. I've been committed to it. I'll continue to.
Thank you. And we'll take a break from our vignettes for another question. A national study of nonprofit government contracting recently released by the Urban Institute showed Massachusetts was among the 10 worst states for the complexity of and time involved with the reporting process due to extensive, duplicative paperwork and administrative burdens. As governor, what would you do to reduce this administrative burden so human services organizations can devote more time and money to helping the most vulnerable residents in our state? Jeff, we'll start with you.
Well, Karen, at the outset, when I said I'm traveling throughout the Commonwealth, and I hear this everywhere I go, that people that are providing services, and for those folks in the room that don't know this, many times there are quite a number of providers. It has to be integrated. They have to integrate with the agencies. This is part of the state's job. This is one of the most critical pieces of the state's job. And a lot of it is about using technology and eliminating redundancy, helping people derive better outcomes for their clients. And again, there is so much savings there that you can put back into the system. I sincerely believe that's where a lot of the increases in salary can come from if we just run it well, and we don't, and we haven't been forced to do that, and we need a governor who is going to force people, who's going to proactively push people in the right direction.
Very good. Charlie?
I'm not being a smart aleck here, but I'm surprised we're one of the 10 worst, okay? This issue has to be dealt with. I love this state. I love the people of this state. I love the people who work in public service and in the public sector. But there is something in the water. There's something in the DNA. If there's a really complicated, preposterously difficult way to do something that takes forever, we will find it and we will love it. And no one will be more aggressive about dealing with this problem than I will be as governor. In fact, I won't appoint anybody to work in my administration unless they come through the door, salute smartly, and say this is one of their fundamental priorities as a commissioner or as a secretary, or to do anything, because we have made this system far too complicated for you, for the people we serve, for everybody. And this has to be a fundamental objective of the next administration. And I can tell you right now, with a very high degree of confidence, that I will climb all over this one all day, every day, for as long as I'm governor.
Thank you, Charlie. Martha?
I agree the state can do better. And one of the goals, obviously, is to make communication, cutting out those silos I talked about, and making it more user-friendly. We have the ability to do that. The state often is behind the private sector, but let me just tell you, when we were dealing with some of those big banks about getting mortgage settlements, we dealt with people who said time after time, you know, we heard from Bank A or Bank B, they lost the paperwork. We can't find your loan subrogation account. So this is not unique just to government. It has to do with what your mission is and how you're willing to fulfill it. When I came into the Attorney General's office, we said, we need to upgrade our platforms. We have to get all of our charities' work off of file cards. We need to come into the 21st century. I know we can do it. We are the home of some of the best and the brightest around communication. But we can't forget that our goal is about providing services to the people that you serve, that we serve. And it can't be just about online technology. It can't be just about the technology. It has to be in the service of what we're trying to do. Better services, better integrated services, better ways for you to serve the population, those of you who are here today as providers, that you know best, whether you're at the Home for Little Wanderers, you're at the Boys and Girls Club, you are working at Work Inc. We need to work better with you to make it user-friendly so we can all focus on what we're trying to do, which is make life better, less expensive, and more healthy for people here in Massachusetts. It's what you do, it's what I'll do as your next governor.
And Evan?
Yeah, it's interesting. In my business career, I hired a lot of people, and this is one of those interview questions where you got to be able to answer this one, right? You know, it's like asking someone, what's your biggest weakness? My weakness is I work so hard that sometimes my family life suffers, but I'm willing to do it because I care about the job. So everyone is giving you some version of that answer, and the truth is we should think about the process of hiring a governor like it's a job interview. And you should be able to listen to everything the person talks about, even when they're not answering a question specifically, but whether they care about waste and red tape and things that don't make sense. I care about that as much as anybody. No, I care about it more than you, Charlie. You know, I mean, we all care about it. We're all going to be something that matters. But you have to be able to listen to each candidate talk and decide, when I hire that person for that job, is it really going to happen that way? Is that what it's really about? So I think in organizations, the ones that I've been involved with, you get down to the level below that top line person that you hire. That's where you find out what the real deal is. That commissioner is always going to tell you, I'm on top of it, sir. This is all going really, really well. And if something is messed up, well, geez, we get most of them. We didn't get that one. You go down and you do the hard work of meeting all the different people doing the direct work. They'll tell you what's wrong and what needs to be fixed. And I want to elevate people like that throughout state government who are doing a really good job and make sure that they've got the responsibility for making sure that we do better.
Thank you. Now we are going to roll the video for our final vignette and question.
Well, what's remarkable is the growth in the human services sector. 2003, there were about 100,000 jobs in the sector. By 2011, 145,000, almost a 50% increase. And what's striking is that during that period, total employment in Massachusetts actually declined slightly. So the contrast between a slightly declining employment statewide and almost a 50% increase in the human services sector is really dramatic. The wages earned by these 145,000 employees and the other ensuing economic activity comes to more than $3 billion. Now that's significant because almost all of that money is spent and plowed back into the Massachusetts economy. I think it's important to understand the human services sector. There's a vibrancy to the sector, and the leaders in many of these organizations are also leaders in their communities, and this sector is statewide. So it adds a real sense of excitement and caring for people as part of the business community. And I think in that sense, there's a greater impact than just the economic benefit. It's also the leadership role that's played by the human services providers in the Commonwealth. One of the most alarming statistics is that the human services sector accounts for 5% of all the jobs in the Commonwealth, but only 2.1% of the wages. That discrepancy is a major problem, and it obviously reflects the fact that this sector pays low wages. In that context, it's really important that the Commonwealth continue to implement promptly Chapter 257, which was passed by the legislature several years ago. The Massachusetts Taxpayers Foundation's research helped build the case for Chapter 257 in 2008. However, this important legislation has only been partially implemented. What would you do as governor to assure the human services sector that this legislation would be promptly implemented under your administration?
And just to repeat the question, what would you do as governor to assure the human services sector that Chapter 257, passed in August 2008, would be promptly and fully implemented under your administration? Charlie, you'll begin this round.
Well, we've talked a bit about this issue already, and I guess what I would say is I made a commitment in 2010 when I ran for governor to implement this legislation, and I meant it. And I don't understand why we sit here today with the provider community suing the Commonwealth of Mass and the Attorney General defending the Commonwealth of Mass on this question. I mean, the law is the law. And I can tell you that as governor, I've been waiting 4 years for the opportunity to implement 257. 257 is not just about the wage and the economic piece. I really believe that if you care about the people that are served by your organizations, 257 is not just about the money. I believe you'll actually end up delivering a far better product. Your turnover will go way down. A lot of the issues associated with the relationship between caregivers and the people that they're serving will improve. I mean, I've been in and out of many provider organizations, and one of the things that's always been interesting to me is in organizations that have a stable workforce where the caregivers have been there for a significant period of time and the folks that they're taking care of know them and trust them and have a relationship with them, it's a totally different game than it is in situations and circumstances where there's a ton of turnover. There's an opportunity here, I believe, to not only improve the quality of life for workers, but the quality of life for the folks that are being served as well.
Thank you, Charlie. Martha?
So thank you, Michael, for that question. It's not the one I was expecting, but it is a good one. And I want to just state that as Attorney General, my job is to represent the government when they are sued. And there is an action in litigation right now. It is a matter for the legislature, which is exempt from suit. But I can tell you that as Attorney General and as the next governor, I hope that this will be a top priority. But 257 to me, given particularly what you've just pointed out, Michael, in that question, is really not the ceiling. It should be where we start. Because you have pointed out what an important sector this is and the disparity between not only the percentage of budget we spend on it and the number of workers, but also that 80% of those workers are women. And 80% of those workers are not making as much money as they should. I come back to where we started in this discussion today about the values the next governor will have, the people she will speak for and work for, and that is both your salaries, making sure we set the rates. I know that's an issue also, that we haven't set the rates, that we look at our reimbursement rates, which are not sufficient, and we need to change it, and that governor will have to work with the legislature to make that happen, but there'll be nobody better than me to make the case of the importance of what you do for mental, behavioral health, our seniors, all the people you serve. That's where I start, and we will make Chapter 257 fully funded.
Thank you. Evan.
Now, Martha's right that she's defending the lawsuit because her job is to be the lawyer for the state, but she's also the people's lawyer, and I would prefer that what she were doing was suing the executive branch to make them enforce Chapter 257. The law's already been passed. It's not about the legislature. So my job as governor, one of my first priorities will be to make your lawsuit moot by settling it, by paying the money that's supposed to be paid that the legislature said should be, by reappropriating money from other allocations and putting it here where we have a responsibility to put it. But it also means that we have to be going out not to this audience where you already understand this issue, but making sure people that have not heard about Chapter 257 and have no idea what it is, or people that are in the legislature right now who would just as soon see that it not get dealt with and instead that we're building more convention centers. That's what the job of the next governor has to be. Be very real, be very genuine, confront people with truths that maybe they don't want to hear about. You know, it's going to cost money to make sure that people that are providing these kinds of services to the huge numbers of people that require them are paid for correctly. And let's make sure of that. Let's make the case showing them that it's a business opportunity for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. But the thing is, all this has been talked about for years. What's been missing is leaders that want to implement it. I will. It is my word to you, but most importantly, you have to hold me accountable. Because if I win and I don't do it, you got to get me out of office. You got to get me out of there, because you need to bring people in that will actually take you seriously and deal with these issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Evan. Jeff?
Well, the good news here is we all believe 257 should be enforced. So that I think you're going to get no matter what. For 27 years, I've been building companies. I've been building them in the environmental space, the energy space, healthcare, software, biotechnology, education. And there are some common themes when you do that with these small companies and building into their growth. You will get higher retention if you pay people more. There's no question about it. You will get more productivity. There is no doubt about it. You will have better service to your underlying clients. There is no question in my mind. And I sincerely believe that if we do a great job of having the technologies, again, coming from the state level, where we really measure the outcomes, we can figure out what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong, and how to share the best practices and deliver more for the people of this Commonwealth. because hard-working taxpayers are paying these taxes and they expect good outcomes. And if it's the state is the problem, the state needs to fix it and empower the people in this room so that they can get their jobs done better and easier, and so that people can have an appropriate wage level to do it.
Thank you. Now, as we're nearing the end of the program, we only have about 15 minutes left. I'd like to offer the candidates for governor the opportunity to speak directly to this audience of human service workers, clients, friends, and supporters, and make your 2-minute closing statement. In your statement, we ask you to share with us what you consider to be your single greatest accomplishment for the human services sector during your tenure in public office or your professional career. Martha Coakley, we'll begin with you.
So thank you, everybody. Some of you may have heard me talk on the trail about my younger brother, Edward. He was smart, he was funny, played the piano, and at age 17, he showed signs of mental health problems and depression. Edward said, I won't get treatment, I won't take medication, because I won't be able to get a job. There's a stigma attached to it. And although he graduated from college, of course, he couldn't hold a job or relationships. And after my folks passed away, now 20 and 22 years ago, he took his own life this October, 18 years ago. We lived with that stigma. I don't think family members should, and we should do better. In 2014, we should be treating mental illness the way we do diabetes and cancer, and we can. I mentioned the young man when I first started up at Lowell District Court who was involved in the criminal justice system because he had done something wrong, but he didn't really understand what he had done. And we spent months trying to find a residential placement for him. Single mom taking care of him. She had no resources. We should have had more beds then. We need more beds now for all of those people who are in the criminal justice system who need other help. And a few months ago, I sat with 15 women in Somerville whose children are all adults who are heroin addicted. They were desperate for help. They knew it might not come and they knew it might be too late for them. But they asked me, and I know that they want some solutions for that. I know you work with all these populations and more. I'm proud of the work that we've done and will do in the Attorney General's office in trying to reduce the stigma. I will be proud as governor of reducing that stigma and making sure we provide not only for the workers, all of you who work so hard, but for the population you serve. That's what my public service has always been about. That's what it will be about as governor. Thank you.
Thank you. Evan Falchuk.
Thank you. And I'm Evan Falchuk. I am running for governor, and I founded the United Independent Party based on some simple ideas, which are that everyone is equal, that everyone's civil rights must be protected, and that the government must spend our taxpayer money wisely. I think today we see a political establishment that is not taking people seriously or treating them seriously. I think it's why we see only 16% of voters showing up to vote in the last primary, and why a majority of the legislators in our legislature are running unopposed in this election. We've got a political process that is not representing people and not fulfilling the promises that it has made to those who are in need. There is an extraordinarily important role for our government to play, but it is unable to play it if the people in it are not willing to stand up for what is right. My vision in founding this party, which will become an official party during this election, is that in 2016, we will be able to put all kinds of smart, independent candidates on the ballot to run in some of those unopposed races and in some of the ones that are opposed, and to start to fill our legislature with people that care about these issues and will not just talk about them, but vote to take action on them. Now, in my business career, I was the president of a healthcare company called Best Doctors, where we worked every day to help make sure people got the right diagnosis when they were facing an illness. And that has an impact on so many people that are misdiagnosed, that are dealing with issues, especially of mental health. But I believe always that for each individual, the challenges of the greatest accomplishments in your life are ahead of you, for all of us. And I hope as governor to have the opportunity to fulfill the promises that have already been made by this Commonwealth to the people that provide these services, and also to look forward and say, what are we capable of doing? How can we best leverage this opportunity for not just the people that are being served, but for those who provide the work itself? In that, I ask for your support, I ask for your vote, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Evan. Jeff McCormick.
I can't say that I've done the great work that many of you have done. Perhaps the most important thing I'm doing socially is raising 3 responsible children who are now 10, 11, 12 with my wife, Christine. I can tell you that decades ago, when a star athlete friend of ours and the family had a tragic accident and became a quadriplegic, and I started to work with him, I got religion very quickly about some of the demands of your jobs. I understand it. The good news about him, by the way, is he's now a top secret military programmer, and his work defends us this very day. So it is a great story of resilience. I've worked for 27 years building companies in the private sector, creating thousands of jobs, a lot of opportunity for people. I know how to drive efficiency. I know how to use technology. I've been there and I've done it. I've done it in various areas. Education, perhaps you could say, well, teaching millions of kids math throughout the United States, especially when it's the #1 reason why young men of color drop out of high school, this particular area of math, that's really cool. That's very socially redeeming. I'm working on a drug for a neurological disease that could ultimately affect hundreds of millions of people throughout the world. That actually might have just tremendous social implications and applications. Again, honestly, I can't tell you right now that I know we're going to be successful with that. But we're thinking out of the box with these companies. We're moving things, we're challenging the status quo, and I believe sincerely we need that in a governor, someone who knows how to be proactive and solve the problems. The opportunity is here in our Commonwealth. We just need to seize it.
Thank you, Jeff. Charlie Baker.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you all for being here today, but as I said at the beginning, I want to thank you for what happens after you leave here and what you do every single day on behalf of the people that you serve. You know, Manny Carballo, who was a previous Health and Human Service Secretary, said one time that you got to be really good with a great steward with the dollars at Health and Human Services because they're hard to get. And you got to make sure you maximize the benefit to the people that you're trying to take care of. And having spent 4 years at Health and Human Services, 2 at Undersecretary and 2 as Secretary, and then 4 years as Secretary of Administration and Finance, where I spent a significant amount of time continuing to work on the issues that involve you and the folks that you work with, I was always bothered by the fact that I never felt we got it quite right. And I think, for me anyway, as somebody who's continued to visit a lot of these programs, whether I was running for office or not, and has continued to talk to a lot of folks in this community, I can tell you that getting this right, coming up with output measures that people can agree on and believe make sense, coming up with an administrative and regulatory structure that enables you to be successful and to do the things you believe you need to do on the behalf of the people you serve instead of something that constantly gets in the way of your capacity to do what you think makes the most sense. And supporting, whether through the legislative process or through the administrative process, the idea that this is a space and a group of people who, if we do more and work more with, we will get more in return. That's why I would like to be governor. We can do better, and you can do better, and the people that you serve will do better. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Charlie. We'd like to thank the candidates today and to our host, the Providers Council, for sponsoring this important forum. Thank you to our interpreters for helping to make this conversation as inclusive as possible. On behalf of the Providers Council, that's right. On behalf of the Providers Council, we want to thank you for being here today. And remember, November 4th, please go to the polls to elect our next governor and our many other leaders, and to make the choices about ballot questions that will have an enormous impact on our economy and quality of life. You in the human service sector make a difference. Thanks for being here today. Good afternoon to all.